back, everybody. I'm here with Mr. 111. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I knew for a long time I was going to have you on board because you and I, over the years, have had many conversations about a wide variety of topics in the occult. And it usually has to go back to the occult. How did you get started well, first of all, I should probably ask you, I don't even know how to phrase this. You're going to have to help me out with this. What practices have you done? What societies have you joined? What am I trying to ask you here? You understand,
what
right?
Occult streams have I swum in? I've traveled a lot, wandered through a lot of different orders and groups. Spent a lot of time in Masonry and then sort of branched out into other related orders. Spent time in Golden Dawn, Builders of the Adytum, OTO.
Get closer to the mic, please.
Spent time in a wide variety of occult organizations, searching for the truth, trying to find what fits best for me. It's been a long, wild ride, and thankfully I was able to use some of the techniques that I learned through those different schools to help my investigations better.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of, to use a familiar phrase to people who have watched Hellier, but sort of like using occult rituals to contact extra-dimensional entities. Sort of began blending the two worlds of occultism and the other side.
Sure. What organizations or what societies have you formally been, or have there been any societies that you formally have been initiated in? That's the word, by the way, I was looking for before, initiation. I should have thought about that, yeah.
It's I've been initiated into a handful of different societies, and not all have I put enough time into. Some I put in the blood, sweat, and tears of just years of work, but not all of them. Masonry and a lot of its offshoots. I'm no longer a Mason. Not active. The Golden Dawn I was a part of for a while back in 2014. 2017 I began my Thelemic OTO journey.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was Aleister Crowley's society.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'd already been familiar and interested for many years before that.
Sure.
It's part of the Rosicrucians back to 2012, I think. I think it was 2011, but I got the initiation in 2012. I think that's what it was. Studied a big amount of different systems. Been a part of some other ones too. Some not quite sure how much down the rabbit hole I want to go on those, but spent a lot of time in the IAM activity as well.
Okay. With
Saint Germain and his ascended master buddies.
Right.
I've walked a lot of different occult paths. It seems like the metaphoric temple of occultism is kind of in ruins, and I'm like looking through the rubble of different groups, different orders to try and find the pieces of...
Well, it does seem that way, doesn't it? Because it seems like a lot of these organizations, they are just a shadow of what they used to be. You had some heavy hitters in these organizations. You had, politicians. You had military generals. What's his name, Michael Aquino. And now it's like, it's very like TikTok-y type of social media type of cultism.
It's definitely the scene has changed.
Yeah.
There are still serious, heavy occult movers and shakers.
That's good to know.
But most of them keep to themselves, and
right.
Many are, unpublished and not like not looking for a following. They just want to do their own thing.
Yeah. Now, with a lot of these societies, whether it's I Am or whether it's the Golden Dawn or OTO, the I feel like the theme with a lot of them is uh, to engage with your higher self or to transcend. Now, I'm sure that's part of what you're doing, but I also feel like a lot of what you try to do, you specifically, is communication with other intelligences. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, why that specific aspect of a lot of this occult training does that fascinate you?
Um, that's I grew up in a family that like really appreciated a lot of different cultures, and it was just sort of like my dad would travel around, get me different little souvenirs, and the more that I learned about the world, the more that I enjoyed those different cultures. But there's only so many, and I want to experience something that you can't quite find in the normal encyclopedias.
Yeah.
And so I decided that if I have a life to live and I can do anything with it, why not use that to try and contact extra dimensional intelligences and
Yeah, why not, right?
convince them for a tour of their world, or just get to know them, to learn about them. If I could like go around and hop around to all the different star systems, that'd be amazing. I mean, I know that's sort of a far-fetched dream, but I know that like
But I do know that you had some communication with other worldly beings. I mean, before you
Yeah.
answer, let me adjust your mic. Yeah, I'm really curious about your what you've communicated with and what that kind of dialogue has been like.
uh, I've I've had a variety of contact experiences. Normally, they happen when I'm going for them, but when I'm not actively going for it in the moment. What I mean is like one time I'd spent 2 weeks camping at a spot, trying to get into what was beneath, and I didn't have any luck for those 2 weeks. But it was like the very last day when I was just sort of getting ready for everything. I was led to a weird spot, which I'd somehow never seen before, even though I'd been by it 1,000 times, and checked it on the maps, and it was like every single map thing gave a different address or a different owner or a different whatnot. Like it was a glitch on the map, and so like they hadn't shown themselves to me that the entire 2 weeks I was there, but on the very last day they drew me into this area, and it wasn't a full, like there wasn't a conversation or anything, but it began by me feeling and beginning to see presences around within that little path that I was in, and then really hard to explain, but it was like a finger of an energy beam, just sort of like it shot out of wherever it was. It's kind of hard to put it, but it was like a touch, if anything. It was like something was sort of just like letting me know it was there, and it was fully visible. It wasn't like just something that I felt, which I definitely felt it too, but it was clear, distinct. Like this is, I could track it with my eyes.
What did it look like?
Like an arc of energy, coming from the presence that was there. I couldn't quite see the presence. I could feel the outline of it, or I could like sense the outline, but it was that specific, like the beam into me. And it's hard to describe the feelings of kind of what happened in that moment and what happened like just leading up to that and there. But there was they made themselves known. Like they made their presence visceral and intangible. But the way that they communicated is sort of on like a mental plane sort of thing. Like it was no direct words, but it was just sort of I don't know, the presence of energies that were pushing thoughts.
Sure.
Hard to put.
But I know you go into these meditative states. So is that what you were doing before the specific
No.
encounter?
And I was fully awake, walking around. I had I'd parked back there to I felt that I needed to be there for some reason. Like something just drew me in, and sat down with a book, and that's when they started coming in. It was really weird. Thing is, I should say that area is known locally for some of the mountain inhabitants. It's mentioned in Hellier and in the Pennyroyal podcast as like a little a place inhabited by something.
What mountain range is this?
This is the Pennyroyal Plateau.
Okay.
So it's kind of a big range, but that the Cumberland River and the Pennyroyal Plateau. There's a handful of caves and a handful of things out there.
What state is this?
Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah. Should also say that when I was there, I got to crawl about 1,000 feet inside one of the mountains.
Oh wow.
Yeah, inside a. So this was the weirdest for me. I was preparing to go back to the spot. I had already camped there before, but I felt that I was missing something. And when I how do I put this? I used to work midnights, and I would work alone most of the time. One time I was at the building, had Google Earth on my my thing, and just kind of looking around, just enjoying planning for the vacation.
Sure.
And I heard a voice behind me. I was alone completely physically, but I heard a voice behind me, very clear, very crisp, say, "You'll find what you're looking for there." And there was like a spot that was like highlighted on the screen, not digitally, but just like, "You'll find what you're looking for there." And I knew exactly where there was. And when I went there, it turned out to be the entrance to the collapsed mine system. Crawled around, got about 1,000 feet into the mountain, and I was able to hear cars, which is really weird. Like car doors slamming, cars moving. There are underground highways in various areas, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was one there, but like on the surface, there was nothing out there. No cars. The place where I camped 2 weeks, and no one came by at all. Or 2 people total within those 2 weeks had ever crossed my path.
Wait, so
super rural, but I could hear cars very active beneath the ground.
oh, okay. Now I'm putting
Yeah.
it together.
Sorry.
Okay, so these were cars you heard within the mountains.
Yes. Yeah. On the surface, dead, lifeless, no one driving. If there is a car, it's one on the back roads going around, whatnot. But underground, I could hear like a highway.
So what was that about?
Not sure. I didn't go far enough. There was an area where I could see that there was like some sort of white mold type stuff, and I just kind of got spooked out. Didn't want to go without a better sealing mask, because masks don't really seal that well with this beard. But got pretty far, and still alive to tell the tale. Maybe a couple extra heavy metals from crawling around, but
are these highways and these cars that are going by? I'm assuming you're not even talking about these are ghostly things. These are actual highways.
Yeah.
With cars.
Yep.
So
there
are these
is a lot of underground infrastructure, highways connecting, like going from east coast to west coast. There's not as many highways as there are on the surface, but there are some underground passageways that are normally like military only, but they do have underground sections of private tunnel. So
yeah, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here, because I know you've done a lot of research or a lot of exploration into this idea of underground bases. And I know there's some locations that you can't talk about, but these, from your experience, these underground bases, are okay, there's the idea, right? The hollow earth theory. And I know what you're talking about is these are, probably part of the military industrial complex. But as the late conspiracy theorist Phil Schneider said, that it's humans working alongside beings from the hollow earth. Has that been your experience?
I've not experienced that myself, but that is part of the fuel that drives me.
Okay.
Because my ultimate goal is hollow earth stuff. The underground bases, they're cool and all, but it's like a stepping stone for me.
Okay.
So honestly, there's a couple times where I've gone to places where I think that there are, or that there is human-alien military interaction, and tried to get caught at those places so I could, convince them to give me a job there and convince my way to just, go to the deep basement.
Do you think that would really work?
I bet my life on it. Still somehow alive, but also haven't made it yet. So,
besides those ghostly cars, has there been other ghostly cars that you've heard in while exploring cave systems?
Not normally, no.
What else have you experienced to let you know that there's people in these tunnels?
Let's see. Kind of depends on which ones.
Well, you've done the Blue Ridge Mountains, right?
Yeah, Blue Ridge Mountains.
Did you get anything
beautiful
there?
See, I once set off a sort of alarm system on one of the bases.
Oh, how did that happen?
Alarm system isn't quite the right word, but so there's this one place I had been going to that I had good intel on that there was something there, and there is something there. And I have interacted with them once, but the thing is, I went back multiple years, and the second year there was someone there waiting for me to keep an eye on me. He was very clearly like military intelligence and was there basically to just keep me corralled. But he was a great guy. I enjoyed him.
Was this when you went inside the tunnel, or was it still outside of it?
No, sorry. This the when I crawled in like over 1,000 feet, that was in Kentucky. But this is North Carolina.
In North Carolina.
Yeah.
But when you encountered this man, was it inside a tunnel or were you outside of it?
Outside.
Outside. And
Yeah.
so he was just like kind of, what was he doing when you
He
arrived?
was well, when I first met him, he was kind of waiting, just waiting, watching, and like once I walked to the place where I definitely would have normally gone,
Yeah.
because I mean that is the right place to wait for me.
Right, yeah.
I started a conversation, began talking, and very clearly was kind of corralling me, like, "Hey, you should really camp over here. Like this
Mhm.
is the spot you want to camp at." And he's right; that is a really good spot, even though it's very clearly easily observed. I was sort of like corralled into observable position, but
Was he dressed in a certain way that would let you know that he's not just a regular camper
he
or hiker?
he dressed in the way that you would expect a Fed to try and look like a normal
Okay.
undercover, like
Okay. So kind of just plain clothes.
plain clothes, but very plain clothes. But
Yeah.
he's so thing about him is that he was sort of used to like hold me at different times,
Yeah.
or not hold, like not against my will, but sneakily, cleverly.
Right.
But so one time I did a little ritual. I wanted to find a loose spot because I realized one of the tricks I have for finding things is that I know that like people are messy. People are not going to clean up everything. You're always going to find something off. And so I went into this like meditative state tried to like visualize me finding one of those spots, and then I got up, I hopped, I started walking barefoot, and the place that I just almost semi-hypnotically walked to, it was essentially it was a it was right over, how do you call it, like when I was banging on the ground, I could hear the metal of the like escape hatch or whatever it is within this very clearly like cut out square in the mountain.
Okay.
It's like this is not like, it's not just the rocks that vibrate. It's like this is clearly a thing. And so I went back to tell this guy. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't crazy. That I was like, am I hearing this correctly? Like, is that metal? And he switched into a different mode. He like said he couldn't leave for a moment. Held me there with him, and then started joking the entire time about like how kind of like in the A-Team, like some group is like hurrying in to like fix everything, and when we got back there 10 minutes later, there was probably about 40 campers that moved in like right in that moment. Like they were just swooping in. It was the strangest thing. It was like, nope, no one can explore anywhere around the spot anywhere. This entire area is taken.
Oh, so you think that was staged?
It could have been, or realizing that I found a loose spot and it was like, we got to take care of this so that he doesn't go digging around in the middle of the night.
What do you think is in these bases?
This one, I think that there's alien inhabitants. A, I've seen them. B, this is the I should say, for clarity's sake, this is the mountain very nearby where in the Hellier show in season 1 episode 1 they try and get abducted in the alien cave base. This is that place.
Okay.
And I've found other indications of interior inhabitants. I personally believe that I saw some of these inhabitants one night. To make a long story short, I went out to an area and you're not supposed to go to. It was
course.
technically off limits. And from there, when I looked back at the mountain, like it was dusk, the light had settled. When I looked back at the mountain, I could see a couple people like hanging out at the edge of an area that you can't get to. Like even during the day, I've tried multiple times over the years to get to that area. Gotten close once, but it's still like, that's not an area anyone would be. And they were all in jumpsuits. And they, like, kind of like a Galaxy Quest type jumpsuits. It was really weird, like in the middle of the forest. And it was all the same one. And I shine my light just to see if like it's not like how do you call it, like just a diagonal thing on their dress. Shine my light to see if that was like a backpack strap or something, but no, it was part of the uniform. And I realized that that's like where they were is an area that no one can see. Like no one driving by, no one, even if you have a house that's nearby that's on the other side, like it's in a perfect position where if there were inhabitants of the mountain, they would want to have a little area where they can sort of like go out and enjoy the sunset and not have to worry about others seeing them. And again, the only reason I saw them was because I was in an area that was technically off limits. So
now, how do you know that it's off limits? Like, does it?
There's signs.
Oh, there's a sign. Okay.
Yeah, there are signs there.
Now, what's the reason? What does it say on the sign that you know that you can't? I mean, obviously it probably says "do not enter," but what would be the reason for according to them?
The official reason is it was a normal thing, but that same sign has been there for a long time. But like the hawk mating thing, which does make sense. But thing is, it's like that area is always blocked off, and I've noticed in other places with those, like if an area is blocked off with the hawk thing, it'll kind of shift around from year to year depending on where they are, but it's like always there for that one.
Okay.
I've only seen them there once. Um, I've I've explored that area quite a few times.
So for like hawks mating, they don't want people to be in that area so they could do their thing.
Yeah, or like so they can hang out in their nests without being
Okay.
disturbed, but there
Well,
aren't.
when you saw these beings, how many of them were there?
It was like 4 or 5.
Okay, did you
Um,
see their face or their head?
No, there's probably like 100 feet away,
Okay,
maybe more, but it was dusk. It was there was also a little bit of fog, but the flashlight when I shone it on them cleared up that, like, it's not just a trick of the eye.
sure. Did they leave when you flashlight on them?
No.
What were they doing when you? Yeah, what were they doing when you saw them, and then what did they do when you flashlight?
They didn't move at all from when I first saw them to when I left. When I saw them and when I like shine my flashlight on them, I could. The best way to put it is like I could feel a chuckle. You know how you can sometimes feel if you're within the energy bubble of someone else and
Yeah,
they're like
sure.
really happy, really sad. Like it was kind of like I was in the bubble of something that was 100 feet away, and I could like feel it just chuckle. Like it was just like a little, like, that's funny, that's cute. He's shining the light on us, making sure we're real.
Right.
I didn't feel that in my head. That's just my rationalization for the chuckle. But they stayed there. I eventually left because I didn't want to like call out and act weird. Plus,
Yeah.
it'd been a long day, and I just wanted to like get back to my tent and.
So you
actually
just
set
walked
up my
away.
tent.
You just walked away.
Essentially, yeah.
So-
Yeah, but it was nighttime at that point.
Obviously, it's a weird scene, right? Because there's these things in suits, and they're in the mountains. You don't know what they are. Whether they were human or not, it's bizarre that they were there. Is it possible that they were human though?
I've wondered that. That's why I've tried to get back to that spot over the years. Like, even though my personal belief is that they aren't human, that they were just experiencing, or they're not Earth human, I should say, because the human
Sure.
form might be elsewhere. But even though my view is that they are otherworldly, I still have the possibility or the just that thing in the back of my head where like, oh, maybe not, maybe it's this, like always trying to find some sort of other answer for it.
Yeah.
But with everything I've seen in that area over the years, and including everything that happened to me in that area over the years, I definitely, it's more likely than not that those were otherworldly.
Yeah.
If they're just cosplayers in a really hard place to camp, then that'd be pretty funny. But it was
Maybe that's why they were chuckling.
maybe, yeah, I would laugh too if I was
Right.
in a forest dressed like that.
I'm really interested in something that you just said. You said that they could have been people, just not human. So it's the idea that otherworldly beings could be very human-like. Correct.
Yeah, there's that thing about some aliens look so human-like that they can walk amongst us and we wouldn't even know, or we'd just think that they were like some awkward person, like some tall gangly figure, or some like, oh, I don't know how to put it, but there are a lot of allegedly there are a lot of different races that can blend in with us, and it kind of makes sense that this would be like the standard human form,
Mhm.
and that there'd be many different variations on this form, and that's why you have people who see like reptilian humanoids or like dogmen or whatnot. Like, it's still this 2-arm, 2-leg head form, but it's a variation on that.
It's like a universal humanoid form.
Yeah.
So all the limbs that we have. Earlier you mentioned Saint Germain. Can you explain to us Saint Germain for people that are not familiar with him?
Saint Germain is it's a kind of a hard story to.
And it's a long
So,
story too. I know
yeah.
that. So if you just want to like give us a couple sentences.
There's so many different ways as well to approach this, but the official story is that he is an immortal alchemist who achieved immortality in the late so 1700s or something like that, and has been working for the betterment of humanity ever since then, working behind the scenes and helping out. The whether or not that case of Count Saint Germain is true,
because there's a couple different theories of Saint Germain, right? It's like
yeah,
there's one where he's much older than that. So
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
just for the audience, Saint Germain, it's one of the ideas is that Saint Germain is what's called an ascended master. He is there. He could have been human, but he could have also been non-human. He's always around. He was a spirit, and he's a spirit that's been helping to guide humanity on a journey of spiritual evolution. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Kind of like a Christ figure, or like the Egyptian god Horus. You know, always there to guide humanity. And
Is sort of a saint which is still here to help, like a bodhisattva sort of thing.
right, yeah. Now, some of these groups that you joined or were initiated in, I should say, they are a lot of them center around Saint Germain.
They don't. I wouldn't say a lot of them. There's one that definitely does the I am activity. That's less of an initiation, more of a, I don't know, a training, a student, an education, if anything. But sometimes Saint Germain has shown up in some of the other groups as well. Theosophical Society, the Builders of the Adytum. Builders of the Adytum was probably the order that really got me going and really imprinted its worldview on me.
And they're called the Builders of what?
Builders of the Adytum.
Builders of the Adytum?
Adytum. Adytum. It's an
Not familiar with
offshoot
that.
of the Golden Dawn.
Okay.
Paul Foster Case, he wrote a great piece on the tarot, and it was noticed by the people in the Golden Dawn, and he was invited in. He worked his way up. He ran his local group for a little while, and eventually broke off to start his own group. It's basically the Kabbalah and the occult taught through tarot.
Okay.
And it's a great group. And Saint Germain does not play a visible role in that group, not too much. But like some of those teachings are mentioned, and he's sort of like further down the pipeline a little bit, or like it's friendly within that worldview. And you'll find Saint Germain stuff in a lot of Boda people's stuff.
Okay. Mike, how are we doing with sound? We're good with sound? I just wanted to check.
No.
Rob, if you want to get that's killing me. If you want to get your phone.
Oh, it's not really
It's it was just killing me. It's just
it's off camera.
I know I couldn't stand it though. I
can't stand your phone right there on the window.
I could feel
That's killing me right there.
I could feel Rob's like I want to get it. And it was loud. I couldn't hear myself think.
Oh, we got some problems out there, man.
Saint
You'll be the
Germain.
next guest on your trip.
Saint Germain. I'm really interested in Saint Germain because I've known about him for many years, but it was recently I've been going to an Ascended Masters church or Ascended Masters center that's in the Chicagoland area, and they're actually Rob, what's the name of them?
Spiritual Seekers. They have like 4 different.
Yeah, they have 4 different names
Spiritual
actually.
Seekers. I know.
Yeah.
Church of Universal Triumphant.
There you go, that one.
Okay, so
Yes.
Oh yeah, Church of Universal Triumphant.
Yes.
But they also call themselves the Spiritual Seekers.
And then they also have like another. Don't they have a
They
third?
have like 2 more names.
Yeah, it's.
They actually joked about it when we went there once.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So are you familiar with them?
yeah, they're the prophets, Mark and Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Yeah.
Yeah. The group I'm a part of is the one that they broke off of.
Right.
Sort of. The original ones, or I don't want to say original because Saint Germain was around before, and
Right. But it is the original.
Yeah.
And Mark Prophet was part of the I Am temple, and then him and Elizabeth created the Church of Universal Triumphant. Correct?
Yeah, yeah, and they eventually settled down in the mountains in Wyoming, I think it was. Yeah, they're an interesting group. It's also interesting because like they have the same technology as like the IM activity, like the decrees, but they're different. They're
Right.
said differently with a different cadence, with a whole different vibe, but it's still the same thing. It's kind of interesting actually. But actually, this summer I went over and visited Mount Shasta and visited the IM activities, the pageant that they put on.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. and
Yeah,
it
I've heard
was-
about that one.
It was gorgeous. It was amazing. I I absolutely loved being there. It was surreal. Got to see a couple UFOs on Mount Shasta.
Oh, how did they look?
It looked like takeoff and landing. It was
Okay.
really weird. It was stuff that was like shooting up and like shooting down.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And not in a way where like if you're just like you tilt your head or something like that. And
Sure.
it's light, but like it was clearly something landing and leaving. And I don't know. I would love to see the other side of Mount Shasta, or the inside of it, I should say. But,
Yeah. Yeah, so Mount Shasta, I mean, it has everything, doesn't it? It's basically like
Yeah.
a mountain version of Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, you have everything from UFOs, poltergeist activity, monsters that can't even be categorized. A lot of cults have, been to Mount Shasta and, taught there. And
Oh yeah.
one of my favorite stories actually is out of Mount Shasta is I think he was a tour guide, and he talks about how he was there by himself and he was in a mountain range, and he suddenly got really, really weak, really tired, and he needed to sit down. And he said that that he felt like he was like energy was actually being taken away from him, and he said that he felt like if he stayed in that spot, he would have become lifeless, and he physically could not get up and walk away from it. So he actually had to roll himself out of that one spot, and once he did, all his energy came back to him. And that same gentleman actually said that another encounter that he had was around dusk, and he sees something like in the sky, and then it kind of like shoots down toward him, and he sees that it's some sort of black mass, and he thinks that it was a creature, like it had like a form to it, and he ducked down, and it went past him, and that was it. He got out of there. But I love those stories out of Mount Shasta.
That's the thing, is that like as beautiful as Mount Shasta is, it's terrifying.
And
There
go
are so
ahead.
many negative stories. People disappearing. What was that? The robot grandma.
The robot grandma.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's not a happy story.
Yes.
And something that like terrifies me the most, that makes me want to go back, and just like throw everything to the wind and just go there and figure it out, even if I have to dig my way down. This sounds kind of weird, but like I should preface this by saying Mount Shasta hasn't really been big in my life until recently, until the last couple of years.
Okay.
So growing up, like even if you asked me where Mount Shasta was 2 years ago, maybe 3, it would be like somewhere out there. And isn't that the New Age thing? Like I didn't know anything actually about it. And had never seen footage. Maybe if I saw anything, it was like a picture in the background of a video or something. But it never like stuck with me. It wasn't part of my reality. And many years ago, probably 10 plus years ago, I had a very haunting dream that stuck with me for a very long time. And I still remember it, still remember parts of it. Like it's deeply imprinted within me. It's one of those that just doesn't go away. And I realized when I was at Mount Shasta that this is the location of that dream. Like
Oh.
I was hiking at 2 in the morning and pretty far away from like where the parking spots are or whatnot, further than I probably should have been. Especially with some of the dangers up there. There's some huge spiders. The I ran into an area that I knew where it was. I knew what was coming around the corners. I knew it was in the whole areas. Like I remember this clearly, vividly from the dream. And even afterwards, I tried to find footage of that to see if like had I seen this somewhere. And I can't find anything on YouTube other than within the tiny corner of one flyover. You can kind of see the field where that began. Like there's no actual footage of that area for me to like have ingested and seen that in any form of dream. So
you had a dream about it when you actually went there physically. Did was it quite an experience for you?
It was haunting. It was bizarre. It was not quite sure how to process everything that happened there. But it was a gorgeous time nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful mountain, and part of me would just live there the rest of my life if I could.
Yeah, I
Although-
bet. Yeah,
Although I should say that the locals didn't seem to agree because of the heat. 'Cause it's way too hot.
that's always how the locals feel. They feel so different about the place than everybody else, right?
Exactly.
Earlier we mentioned the robot grandma. For people who are not familiar with it, because I'm sure a lot of people aren't, right? The two people that watch this show, the robot grandma is the people that work on us. Me, no. It was just a couple years ago, right? I don't. Do you know how many years ago this was?
I'm not sure. I only found out about it the last year or so.
I want to say it was within 10 years. I think.
It was in the 2000s, I think.
Was it 2000?
I mean, like past the 2000 mark. Like
Right.
it's
Yeah,
not
it was
ancient history.
for sure past.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more recent. But anyway, it was there was a family that was they were out in a mountain range in Mount Shasta, and the little boy got lost. He was a toddler, and he got lost. They couldn't find him anywhere. They're looking, freaking out. Long story short, because it is a bit of a long story, but they actually did find him. And do you know how much longer later they found him?
It was like a day or two, or
Yeah,
a handful of hours. It was a while.
It was a while. I mean, we're not talking like a week or anything,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was a while. And then so they found him. He was okay. And then later on, he starts talking about how his grandma was there, and she's the one that was taking care of him. Well, now before you think like, oh, was the spirit of his grandma? No, because his grandma was alive actually. And he kind of described his grandma as like a robotic grandma. Like the way that she moved was very mechanical. And then it's interesting because she wanted him to poop on a, what was it that he pooped on?
I don't think he did, but yeah, she wanted him to poop in a like a paper towel or just some sort of napkin or something, like.
Yeah, she was going
collect
to
a sample.
Yeah, she wanted a sample of his poop, and he couldn't go, and she was getting angry, and then eventually that's like they found him later on, and then didn't he describe other?
Yeah, it wasn't just her that was robotic. He said that the place was full of like statues, like robotic statues that were
Right.
lifeless, but that were very lifelike.
Yeah, like mannequins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think he opened up the conversation with his grandmother by saying like, I like you better than the other grandma whatever.
That's right.
And
Yes.
we're talking about the other grandma whatever.
Yeah.
And the poop thing is interesting because like there's a lot of stories in the Mount Shasta area of that place having genetic research labs, genetic
Mhm.
experimentation, clones, robots, stuff like that. But if there are any of those facilities, like a stool sample, kind of would be what how do I put it? Would be what they would use.
Right.
She also mentioned about the grandma. So the grandma thought that, like, she was weirded out about it, but she also said that she remembered a year before that she had been out in that forest where he had been lost, and she fell asleep one night and woke up feeling like she had been completely drugged and like
Mhm.
something had happened and like something otherworldly had happened, and she, I don't remember the whole story, but it's bizarre and it's not one of the happier ones.
Yeah.
But thankfully the boy made it out alive, and even though we can't confirm his tale, that is his tale, at least. That's
Yeah.
what he says, and
Yeah, I mean, his story made it to the news.
yeah.
Not necessarily the robot. We found out later on, but the
missing part,
the missing part, and then them finding him.
Yeah.
That's
Finding him in a spot that they had already checked multiple times.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
See, I'm missing a lot of details because it's been a while since I read the story. But what's interesting about the story and what when it came out, it was really popular because it leads you down to so many rabbit holes. This idea that we were talking about already is underground bases, research laboratories, genetic manipulation. The idea that humans are colluding with non-human intelligences. For what purpose, we don't know, but it seems to have something to do with, off-world living, also cloning, and a bunch possibly a slave labor, all sorts of things. So that's, it's fascinating. I love that story.
So many rabbit holes.
Yeah,
And I want to find out what's true and what's not.
Right.
For most of them. Some I could probably be better off without knowing, but I don't know. But yeah, Shasta is home to a lot of that.
And it's not all like malevolent either. It's like
no, there's
people have religious experiences there.
I did. I had religious experiences. There are many different groups, New Age groups that have their own spot there, either their own little commune or spent time there. One of my favorites, Father Yod from LA back in the 60s, 70s. His people, like, he was from LA. They moved out to Hawaii eventually, but then when the people came back, a lot of them congregated around Shasta, which, same state as before. Like there's something that draws in a lot of interesting people and groups to the area.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a handful of them.
Did you do any of your underground exploration in Mount Shasta?
I tried, but I didn't. I didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
I was renting a car, and I rented a car, drove from Chicago to Mount Shasta, and then down to
How
Austin.
long was that drive?
It was a lot shorter than it should have been, which means I was speeding half the time and trying to get to the pageant on time. And after driving for a couple of days, I finally I got there like 30 minutes late, but still before the actual pageant itself.
Okay.
But it was still it was a rush against time to get there. So I didn't quite get to enjoy as much as I wanted to. But drove past the Uintas, which I'm convinced has something inside of it. The ones near Skinwalker Ranch.
The which one?
I'm definitely mispronouncing this. I'm so sorry. Uintas, UINTA, I think.
UINTA.
It's there in Utah. It's like immediately east of Salt Lake City.
What is it?
It's a little mountain range thingy, and there's some weirdness there. I mean, like I said, Skinwalker Ranch is right outside.
Right.
Like that's their territory. So there's something there.
Yeah.
Not quite sure what, but
You just felt it?
so how to put it? I've tracked down different areas with different potential bases, either new bases made by humans or older bases that were made not by non-humans or were inherited or not quite sure what. There, like some of the stuff goes back probably like Atlantean days. Not all tunnels are new, essentially. And I had tracked some down to that general area of like the Uintas itself, like being a major vein of that. Like essentially the vein. There's some vein that connects that mountain range with Sedona directly.
Okay.
And
Sedona is another spiritual, highly
Sedona's
charged place.
another UFO hotspot,
Yeah.
which I also visited on the Strip after Shasta. Went from Shasta down through California, LA, out to Sedona, then some weirdness in West Texas.
You mentioned Atlantis. Is it the idea that Atlanteans, is it that they are in these underground bases, or that after Atlantis sunk that they came to America?
More like Lemurian rather than Atlantean, or just there's evidence of very old cave systems that have like, I don't want to say human carvings, but like intelligent carvings, like some underground dugout cities type stuff. But that's like very old, much older than anything we know with official history. And like, not sure exactly what society to pin it to, but whatever society would have gone by Atlantean or Lemurian or whatever. I guess one example on another vein is over in Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico is very interesting for many different reasons, but there's a theory that near that area where it's like super deep off the coast is near like essentially where the real life, quote unquote real life, Stargate Atlantis is. You know how like they found an older base that the military then began to inhabit, that like there's no one there, but it's still like all these ancient relics. That's where allegedly the original one is, or the real life one is, Puerto Rico, that they found. Whether or not that's actually true, it's just that sort of concept of pre-existing underground infrastructure that was then repurposed by humans or other alien inhabitants, or Hollow Earth inhabitants.
I know in ancient Greece, a lot of these mystery school initiations took place underground. And
The Eleusinian mysteries.
The Eleusinian mysteries is just one of them. I think there were others, though, correct? So I find it really interesting that like you have been initiated into various occult groups, but it's like your go-to is also exploration of beneath the earth. So there seems to be a connection there. Is that conscious, or did you just realize that later on?
Kind of realized that later on. I was into this stuff, or I was into occult orders and initiations for many years before this obsession with the underground began. But I should say that during this time, some of those stories of like the Eleusinian mysteries, like going downstairs, having strange rituals in which you get to meet these entities that dwell beneath us, that impart their wisdom, like that's kind of been a little it's kind of been a motivator in some ways. I'm a little unsure kind of where some of that would take. Not quite sure how to frame that, but there are...
Well, it seems like it's like you doing this physically, there's a spiritual component to it, and I feel like you've been doing it like subconsciously.
Yeah, I agree. There is a draw in that's just sort of magnetic, that like I want to... How do I put it? Sometimes I'll find symbols that are related, and then I will research those symbols further and seek out whatever groups use them. And even if that group has nothing to do with anything underground, and they're just some whatever, like getting insight into that symbol, into these teachings, into these ideas, like I'm trying to use that to pivot downstairs.
Yeah.
So there's a subconscious element of just being attracted to it, but there's also a conscious element of like trying to study some of these systems that I think could help me interpret my way downstairs.
Which occult order do you hold the highest degree in?
That's, I don't know. I mean, technically everything ends at the third degree in every order.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it's symbolically, like even higher than the third degree, that's just building on the third or building on the second or building on, like as an example in Masonry, the fourth, fifth, and sixth all take place between 2 and 3.
Oh, is that how it works?
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's symbolic. There are higher degrees, and the orders that I'm a part of, that I'm actively working in these days, they don't really use degrees. One of them does, and that just third in there. But it's not about the degree itself. It's about the the knowledge that comes with it, being able to how to put it, like in Masonry, I'm a 32nd degree, but I don't know all the teachings of all the degrees in between 1 and 32.
Okay.
I know 1, 2, and 3, and I know the offshoots of the Yorks, and I know the various different ones within the Scottish Rite body, which is 4 through 32. I've been in some of those plays. In fact, I'm even in one of the videos, although I think they reshot the video. But, how do I put it? Sometimes degree level doesn't necessarily indicate proficiency in the teachings of the degree.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like, there's one order which won't say what, but in order to advance, I have to be able to do certain things, like energetically, like astral projection or stuff along those lines. And even though I technically could advance and I could say, got it down, let me take the next test or whatever, I don't want to cross that until I have full conscious control over exteriorization and out-of-body projection, and just being able to be able to actually claim the degree rather than have the degree. So
in these occult groups, these initiations are for a reason, and I know that you're provided with these challenges that you have to overcome, and there are secrets that are told. Are there secrets that you have been told that have changed your perception on life? And you don't have to say what they are, but
yes and no. Nothing like, here is the hidden truth of reality and what actually went on and who killed JFK and all that one's pretty obvious by now. But
you haven't reached that.
Yeah,
but it's there.
Yeah, hopefully, maybe.
Once you get to 33rd degree Freemasonry, they tell you who killed JFK.
What happens on the 33rd degree parallel? Yeah. There's definitely been things that have shifted my perspective, but they've been honestly sometimes reminders, more than anything. Like Masonry, they're moral plays. They teach morality, they teach good ethics, they teach just lessons that we need to know. And it's sometimes, I did need a reminder of that. I've appreciated the perspectives that they've given.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely had initiations that have changed the trajectory of my life, or that have changed how I approach life, or almost like some initiations have just turned up the fire a lot, and helped just purge out dross within me.
Do you feel like they've made you a better person than you would have been?
Yes. Yes, although I probably should have done more ego purging before more power acquisition, but you have to learn that one the hard way sometimes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of you know, speaking of symbolism, and before I let you go, we call you Mr. 111, and I know that's symbolic. So can you tell us what's behind that name?
There's there's a lot of things behind that name, that number. First off, I use that name as like a hat. I wanted to create a hat or like a mental framework that could just help me in my investigations. Like there's the magical name that people take on in their magical work that
Yeah.
sort of puts them in that mindset. So I wanted to do the same thing with my investigations of the underground, and and just weirdness in general. I'm one of those people who likes to see patterns or who finds patterns everywhere, and I enjoy it. And I know that sometimes, even though not all patterns are meaningful, sometimes some of those random synchronistic, even schizosynchronistic connections can bring forth valid
Yeah.
leads. So it was like a hat to wear that I could just jump into the madness and kind of find my way out. And so I use that because 111. I see that number everywhere. It's the repeating ones, repeating numbers is happening constantly for many years, as it does to many people. But I've I have a couple of different personal connections to that number. It just keeps showing up in various ways, but Kabbalistically is the most important to me. I've been obsessed with the Kabbalah, with just with gematria, and trying to break down the fabric of words and numbers that seems to control the universe, and mystical toponymy and all that, figuring all that out. And 111 is sort of the number of the number of Aleph, which is the first letter of the alphabet in the Hebrew Kabbalistic, or the alphabet of the Kabbalah. The first letter is Aleph, which adds up to 111. ALP 130 and 80, 111.
And the Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism.
It's Jewish mysticism, but it's beyond my personal view, which is not found in most books, but only in my personal insanity, is that it doesn't originate on Earth. It's a study of primordial teachings. Like if you get down to the Sefer Yetzirah and break that down to its core, like it's beyond anything from any religion. It's mathematical, so yeah, the Kabbalah has been a huge driving force for me. I've spent way longer studying it than anyone probably should, and I still have much more to do. I have thousands of pages of notes on it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the ideas of the Kabbalah, the Jewish letters within the Kabbalah, is the idea that in very ancient times, Jews viewed more than one god, and these gods passed along a secret language that were the building blocks to reality, and that's where we get the Kabbalah from. That's one of the ideas, isn't it?
I would say it's not necessarily that there are other gods. It's that there are so many different pieces within God. It's like it's like the other gods are part of the body of the bigger being. And so you would associate like Horus with the sun, but the sun was just one of the spheres of the 10 spheres and one of the worlds, and it's a whole huge complex system. But yeah, it's sort of the Kabbalah is like it's a roadmap to the universe that includes divinity and includes the realms between the above and the below, and it kind of helps you explore some of those some of the more hidden aspects of nature, ones that have always been there, but you just don't necessarily notice them.
And some of the requirements for Kabbalah, right? You're supposed to be 40 years or older to...
That's, the Jewish Kabbalah.
Yeah.
They're the Kabbalah with a K. They have those requirements. The Kabbalah with a Q is more what I've studied, and some
Okay.
of the C. And, I mean, I've studied the K too, but the Q is like the Hermetic Kabbalah. The the people who say that you should wait 40 years to study it sort of laugh at some of the practices that are commonplace within the Hermetic Kabbalah. Within the
Oh, I'm
Q
sure they
Kabbalah.
both laugh at each other.
And everyone has silly practices.
Right, yeah. You have to be 40 years old, you have to be married, and I think that's like to keep your sanity because you're looking into the
Yeah.
fabric of reality.
That's fair, especially because there are,
At least that's the idea, right?
well, look how many people have gone off the rails, myself included, with deep diving into the Kabbalah with Gematria.
Yeah.
And it's like
Absolutely.
one of the best books that I would recommend, that is the one from Hellier, is Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts. Like, that is Gematria that will send you into
What's it called again?
a state of madness. The Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts by Alan Greenfield,
Okay.
or T. Alan Greenfield, Tau. Great book. It absolute madness in a great way, but it's it kind of helps bring you to the brink and back.
Yeah.
And it also mentions a lot of what we've talked about, the underground alien bases, and biome activity is even mentioned in there, and a variety of other. It's such a strange book. It's a great book. Get it. It will drive you mad.
I gotta check that out. Well, the next time you come, I really want to get into like how your mentality has been kind of, because I know you've broken down a couple times in your life from studying the occult and penetrating the mysteries of life, but you've also you've formulated a new consciousness. So next time I really got to get into that. But this was great, and I really appreciate you taking your time and talking to us.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
thanks a lot, Mr. 111.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks.